Today I'm templating the shower pan so that I can install 12 by 24 large format with an envelope cut. I'm using Luan that's been ripped down into 2-inch strips on the table saw, and I'm hot gluing it with the spacers in place to keep my expansion joint around the perimeter. I'm just using a dab of hot glue. You don't need a lot, just a little bit is fine. And try to be clean because you don't want it getting all over your waterproofing. Here you can see how I've maintained my expansion around the entire perimeter. I want to keep the drain centered as I template around it. I do have a little bit of leeway with that location, but I want it to stay pretty on point for when I make my cuts. Now I'll remove the template, keep it in a safe location, and get ready for my flood test. I'm going to fill this shower pan for 24 hours minimum and see if it holds water. This one in particular sat for a few days over the weekend and still held water. The most important part of your flood test, of course, is your rubber ducky. And you don't want him to get lonely, so he's going to need a friend. And then you don't want them to get lonely, so it's probably best to give them another friend. I'm dry laying the tiles here to ensure that the layout inside the pan matches the surrounding bathroom floor. I want to maintain my spacing and make sure that the drain is in a good spot where it looks nice and centered. Or at least as centered as my layout allows. Now I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to trace my template. I want that line as close as possible to the edge of the template to keep a nice clean edge. I've written notes on the template itself so I can make adjustments in the tracing process. You'll notice I might make a mark here and there, but the idea is, especially as I work around this drain, that I want it on point and I want to take that line off entirely when I start to cut. Now I'm making marks for my envelope cut. I want to mark from the corner of the pan to the corner of the drain grate on all 4 sides. This will allow for pitch with the large format tile. If possible, I want to adjust my layout so I can avoid any small triangles that may be a result of the envelope cut, but generally speaking, you're kind of a victim of the size of the tile. Here we see the finished trace pattern, and I'm about to make the cuts. I'm starting out with the IQ 244 and the hard materials blade. I want to make sure I have a nice clean cut before I go for the envelope cuts that will all be visible. On this particular tile, I notice a bit more chipping than I would prefer, so I'm going to take my grinder and polish up the edges to see if that'll take it out and make an acceptable cut with the envelope cuts. After the polishing, it was still a little more chippy than I would like, so I decided to take the blade off the 244, and I'm going to use the Q-shaped adapter that comes with every IQ blade, and I'm going to take this blade and put it on my wet saw to see if I can get a little smoother results. Each of the IQ blades comes with this adapter. There's a few different thicknesses of blades, so there's about 3 different size adapters that match up to each blade that you may want to use. Getting this next cut is probably the most difficult, as you need all 4 pieces around the drain to line up again. You need to take into account the thickness of the blade when you're using your spacers to set it in the pan after it's set. Here you can see all the dry cuts made, and the pan is laid out and ready to go. I've set the shower pan tile with Bostik Big Tile and Stone, and it's grouted with Hydroment Vivid. I think this envelope cut is a lot cleaner look and easier to maintain than some mosaics. It's a nice option to offer for your customers.